It is 7 p.m. and I'm going to start this meeting on time tonight.
It's not working.
I don't know if this is working or not, but I'll just holler loud. So those in the office, in the audience, welcome tonight. We appreciate you being here. Each council meeting, we always start out with a prayer and pledge, and we take turns with the council members, and we switch it up every month. So it's rotated now back this way, and Councilmember Bloxham will take the lead on our opening tonight.
Thank you, everyone. If we could just stand for the pledge. Repeat after me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And I'm going to lead us in a prayer. Our Father in heaven, we are so grateful to gather together today in this wonderful city with our residents and elected officials and staff. We're grateful for the freedoms that we have. We're grateful for the peace and safety that we have in our city. And we ask you to please bless those who defend us and support us in our public safety and public works. We're grateful for all the good people who help our municipal government move forward. We ask thee to please bless us with good feelings and with the ability to think through issues and come to good ends and deliberate in a way to make decisions that will better our residents. We are grateful for them, and we ask thee to please bless each family and individual in our city that they may be blessed to find success and find happiness. We are grateful for all that thou hast given us, and we say these things in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen. Thank you very much. That was pretty. Okay, Council, we have several minutes to approve tonight, and I guess I better ask, did any of you find any corrections regarding the list of minutes? If not, then I'll entertain a motion for one of you to state all the minutes so that we can approve them.
Ready?
Sure.
Sure. I make a motion that we accept minutes A through H. Can we do that?
Gary, is that legal?
Sure.
Okay.
Good.
It's either that or we have to listen to Dave go through all
That's
of
right.
them.
So somebody second it, and then we'll be done.
That was quick. Thank you.
Okay.
Okay, all in favor of approving the minutes as written, items A through H, please say aye.
All right.
Any opposed? Okay, thank you very much. We'll go on to item number 2, which is our municipal announcements. So, Council, do you have any there? I know probably Parks and Rec has a few.
Yeah, a couple activities. One, looking forward about a month and a half, the Turkey Bowl will take place November 19th at Davis Lanes at 12 o'clock, 1:30, 3 o'clock, or 4:30. So you can go to LaytonCity.org. Let's see, up to 6 people per lane, $20 per lane. So plan ahead. You can go to LaytonCity.org now and sign up for that. And then this month, excuse me, October 21st, free, the Halloween Bash will take place in the Amphitheater Plaza right out here next to our building around the Heritage Museum. Lots of different activities for Halloween. So 21st, 6 to 8 p.m., and that's free.
That turkey bowl, bash, whatever they call it, if you don't sign up early, you don't get there.
Yeah.
So if anybody wants to go, I'd get on it quickly. Yeah.
Yeah, it does. It feels up fun, quick, and it's a fun event. Okay, anyone else?
Tomorrow night, Davis Arts Council will start their small stage series up again for the fall and winter. there's a free concert, Susan Cash, I believe, and that will be over in their small box. And also, OPA has a couple of shows going on, one right now, which is Little Women, and then one that opens this weekend called Wicked Tuna, I believe it is. And so feel free to check out all the arts that are happening in our city because there's a lot of things going on, some free, some not, but all worthwhile.
And Saturday, the active pages.
And Saturday, Active Pages with Davis Arts Council. It is sold out already, even though it was free. So hopefully you got your tickets already. They have 2 showings, one from 2 to 4 and one from 6 to 8, I believe.
Perfect. Okay. Does anyone else have anything they want to share? Okay. I'm actually going to take this opportunity. As mayor, I guess I can adjust the schedule or adjust the agenda. Typically, if I had a presentation, I would go ahead and have it listed. But this week, starting, on Wednesday, and it goes through tomorrow, myself and the council, we've been attending the League of Cities and Towns convention. It's down at the Salt Palace. And it's a great time for all of us to learn a lot of different things that goes on throughout the state, but then also to glean good ideas and try to come back and maybe implement some of those here. I've had the fortune to be able to attend that several times, and in the past I've seen where there's an award that's been given out for various cities that have met different criterias in order to be qualified as a healthy Utah community. And so I want to take this opportunity to...
Unrest had devastated the nation. Those wounds were slowly healing, in large part due to Alex's leadership.
Okay, sorry about that. But I think it would be just appropriate if we take a moment here and acknowledge the fact that this is something that all of us took a part of. Excuse me, sir, do you mind just stepping out? Thank you. Anyway, I won't belabor this any further, but there was, several of us helped with this program as well as some staff, and I just thought it would be appropriate tonight if we acknowledge one of our staff members that actually kind of took the lead to make sure that we fulfilled all the requirements to receive the award, which we did yesterday, as a healthy Utah community. So with that, I'd like to have Mr. Morgan Cloward step up. And Morgan, you're welcome to come here. You can go to the mic, whichever you want. But on behalf of all of us, I thought it would just be appropriate that we take this award that we received, and I want to present it to Morgan. And say, Morgan, you know what? Proudly display this in your department because this is something that all of us appreciate your hard work and dedication of making sure that we fulfilled those requirements. But more importantly, going forward, we need to act on them and really help everyone be aware of how important it is to have a healthy community. So, Morgan.
Thank you.
You can say anything if you want.
Just want to say thank you and appreciate your support, Mayor, and everyone. I think it's important that we get the message out that Lake City is a community that supports those who want to live in an area where there's options that we can take advantage of, like trails to bike, to walk on, to make it a little bit easier to walk to the store, to run errands, and to have different things in place that help us make healthy choices and have a better way of life. And I think it's a good reflection on the community, and it helps attract people and businesses to the area that are looking for that type of place to move to.
Okay. Well, thank you, and thank you again for taking the lead for us on that.
Okay, thank you.
Appreciate it. So like I said, Layton was one of 3 cities that received that award, which was it was very impressive. So anyway, okay. Like I said, normally item number 3 would be verbal petitions or presentations. You just witnessed what I just did there. So now I'll actually move on to the citizens comment portion. So if any of you are here and wish to express your concerns, you're welcome to. However, if there's an item on the agenda, primarily under the public hearing, then certainly you can hold those comments until that public hearing. But before then, if there's something else, you're welcome to come up and you can go to either side of the podium here and just make sure you state your name and address for the record.
My name is Therese Lusitano. I live at 2146 North, 1600 East here in Layton. And my friend, Laura Traum, who also lives in Layton, helped me. We do have a PowerPoint presentation that should be coming up. There we go. Do you see it on your computers? Mm-hmm. So what I want to talk about, and I'll do it as quick as I can, is that both Laura and I have been longtime residents and are very passionate about a gem, which kind of goes right to the award, that we have here in our city is Case Creek Parkway. But we have some concerns, and our goal tonight is to share our passion with you regarding problems that we see happening in this natural landscape to the environment, for the birds and the animals, and a threat to the open spaces surrounding this Case Creek Parkway. The following PowerPoint presentation will highlight our concerns, and my motivation here tonight is to petition the City Council to share in our passion and to help save the Case Creek Parkway. So if we go to the next slide, So these were some of the problems that we've broken down for you to look at. Number one, I think all of us are so aware of the Great Salt Lake and the North Fork and Middle Fork and the South Fork of the Case Creek. Not all of them flow into Hobbs Pond. They go into Hobbs Pond and Adams Pond, but then gradually, hopefully, make it to the Great Salt Lake. They do contribute to the water at the Nature Conservancy's shoreline. I hope everybody's been there. My biggest concern is the Phragmite. It is hampering. It's a non-invasive weed. It's presently taking over any wetlands in the park. I'm also concerned about the habitat, the animal and bird habitat, especially with 89, and then the encroaching developments of any of the open spaces that are left. I know of 3 landowners right now who have their properties, one under contract and 2 others that have them listed. Their properties come to within 10 feet of the parkway. The last one, is the proposed development. So if you go to the next slide, it just gives you an overview of how all the different creeks that come down within Davis County that flow to the Great Salt Lake, and the top 3 on the list are part of the Case Creek Parkway. And if you go to the next one, are most of you familiar with Phragmite? What it is, what it does? I see some heads saying yes, some not. No. So it is an invasive reed that is taking over a lot of our wetlands. There's been massive projects for years at Farmington Bay, Ogden Bay, game preserves with the DWR. Utah Lake has done a massive trying to remediate, get rid of this weed. It's a 3-year process at best. But here in Case Creek, you can see in the top slide where the marshland in the middle is cattails. On the outside is this fluffy weed, grows to 10 feet tall. Right now, if you walk on the parkway, which I invite all of you to do, but enter from the 1450 East entry.
At the bottom.
And within 50 yards of walking on the pathway. The Phragmite reeds are 10 feet tall and hanging over onto the pathway. And then you can kind of notice other places. But wherever the spring water comes up, this Phragmite is sucking up all of the water, which is limiting the amount of water that's going down Case Creek to the Salt Lake. It kills native plants by choking them out. It's definitely a fire danger, especially when it dries out. So that's a concern. The next slide shows where we're concerned about the encroachment of 89, of course, and more development along the Case Creek Parkway, where animals are, especially deer, their natural migratory patterns have been cut off. It's just sad. I mean, it's like I said, it's a gem that we need to focus on. And I think in the master plan for Layton City, they're actually talked about purchasing more property for the Case Creek Parkway. I'm hoping it's here. It might be further down. I think the major goal is to make this parkway go all the way down to the Nature Conservancy Parkway. I don't know what your time frame is. So what have we done? If you go to the next slide, I've spent the last 6 months talking to property owners, people here in Layton City, all the way up to the state level, Utah State University people, Nature Conservancy people, and Case Creek Irrigation. And what it boils down to is any kind of maintenance, preservation, remediation falls on Layton City. And I went through the budget. I don't see any items in the budget for noxious weed control. There are funds available through the Utah State the next slide, I think, our plan for Utah Department of Agriculture has an invasive species mitigation board. There's funds available, but grants need to be written, and the grants need to be submitted by February 1st. And then the Great Salt Lake Water Trust. I think I've talked with some of the people with that, and we fall within that too. So there are funds available, but the process has to start here in Layton City. And I'm passionate. Laura's passionate. We walk the trail 3, 4, 5 days a week. We see some people every day we walk, citizens around it. People are passionate about preserving that little gem. It's one of the few left.
We didn't know we needed to bring a copy for each one of you, but here is, and I'll just leave it with the secretary there, shows in 2011 what the frag lighting looked like and what it looks like today, and it will just shock you that it has taken over everything.
Okay, do you mind stating your name?
Laura Tron.
Go ahead. And address so that Kim can have that.
Questions, concerns, input?
No, thank you for taking the time to present that. That's good to bring it to our attention. And
How do I get follow-up? Because I've been talking to people for 6 months, and everybody kind of shakes their heads, yeah, but then nothing.
Okay, so here's what I'm going to ask you to do. You don't need to say it over the mic, but if you wouldn't mind writing your contact information and hand it over to Mr. Crane, and he'll make sure that our city manager gets it, and then we'll make sure we have the right people involved in this.
Thank you.
Madam Mayor, may I say something?
Sure. Yeah.
Ma'am, I just want to say thanks for coming in and sharing that information. Citizen comments are for anyone to bring anything in, but I'm particularly grateful when you bring in all this information and then you say, well, here's some solutions that I think I have. We're not perfect. The city's not perfect. If there's ways for us to try to get grant money, to try to get to take care of invasive species, we have just as much desire to protect that Case Creek Parkway as you do. But I don't live there. I don't walk there. I don't know about it. So that's why citizen comments are there. So thank you for taking the time to do all that legwork, that 6 months of phone calls and conference calls. And Mr. Jensen will take your information. But I'm just thank you for taking the time to bring this to our attention.
Well, thank you very much. Appreciate that.
Thank you. Okay, is there anyone else that has a topic they want to bring before us before we move on? Okay, if you could, can you come up?
I just have something about the Fulton Farm. Is that later?
Okay. Yes. Yeah, you can. Well, that's in a consent item. Oh, excuse me. No, it is our public. It is under our public hearing. So yes, we'll have you speak then. No, later. Okay, when we get to that item. Thank you for asking, though. Okay, if there's one more comment.
Yes, Mayor.
Okay, you know the procedure.
I know our procedure, like the best Boy Scout. And of course, you all know me as the detective tutor of Layton City, Utah. Best you ever hired. I am going to only stay for 2 minutes. And then I'm not one of those Washington, D.C. politicians. But what I want, and this is for the good of the city council, I want to tell you that I am also a military veteran of 20 years. So this is important to me. Saturday, November 12th at 11 a.m., join the Latency and Northern Utah Vietnam Veterans Ceremonies Honor and the Veterans Parade in Layton City coming up. And Veterans Honors Society, things that's in my heart because I was in the military 20 years and I know what goes on and what happens many different ways. So that's what I came here tonight. And I also go up to the VA hospital to help up veterans on a lot of problems that they have. You probably all know that they have 56,000 patients all the way from Logan, Utah to down at the end of the states there. And so they have veterans like me that knows what's going on and how to write their paper and get them registered and all that. I do all that free because I have a heart there, to help veterans. Because when I was in, it's bad news. I watched over 1,100 get killed in the wars. And that's why I'm against this war today. But I won't go into that.
Okay.
But thank you. Thank you for participating in the Layton City, many here. All community organizations as well as the veteran groups are invited to participate in the parade. The Veterans Honors Ceremony will take place at the conclusion of the parade at the Vietnam Veterans Memorial Wall replica in Layton Commons Park, and many additional things. So I only came here to address this, and anybody in the mayors or the councils want to help or assistance, I'd be happy to help you. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Tudor, and thank you for mentioning the parade because that is a big deal, and they are looking for parade entries as well. So that was very good. Okay, anyone else? Okay, let's go ahead and move on then to our consent items. And our consent items are items that we can act in one single motion regarding the list of items that are under the consent. So with that, we'll go ahead and get started with the first item, which is an approval of a conveyance between Layton City and the R.B. Willie Family Trust. And Mr. Gary Crane, our attorney, will present that information.
Thank you, Mayor, members of the council. This resolution 22-57, is a gracious resolution regarding a contract between Layton City and the Willie family, involving the Willie family's conveyance to Layton City of a parcel of property that has heretofore been kind of in dispute between the Green subdivision on the other side of the creek, just south of the library, and all the way to the east side of the creek, a certain distance. But until now, that property has been in dispute. It was a gap. The Willie family claimed the gap, but recently they came in. We had an opportunity to talk to them. They were very gracious about it, and we agreed to pay the taxes that they had paid for the number of years that they have possessed the property, and a little bit for their work on it. And so with that, the city is really happy to accept the property under Resolution 22-57. And so we recommend approval of that.
Okay. And that will help extend our trail system as well, correct?
Yes. Yeah. Joellen was smiling when this happened.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay. Well, thank you to the R.B. Willie Family Trust for willing to donate that ground then, or to settle, I should say. Okay. Council, you have any questions on that? If not, we'll move on. Okay. Let's go ahead and move on then to item number B, which is the appointment of our Recreation, Arts, Museum, and Park Advisory Committee. And Mr. Dave Price will present that information to us.
Thank you, Mayor. Council, this evening I have the pleasure of presenting Resolution 2261, which introduces 5 individuals Mayor Petro has recommended for appointment to the Recreation, Arts, Museum, and Parks Commission, or RAMP Commission. Mayor Petro has recommended the appointment of Cameron Cross, Maria Odell, and Denise Machen to serve on the RAMP Advisory Commission. Mayor Petro has also recommended the appointment of Jesse Barrocio and Julie Batchelor to serve as alternate members on the RAMP Advisory Commission. This evening, I'd like to also thank all of the RAMP Commission members for their willingness to serve the residents of Layton City, and personally thank the outgoing members, Cheryl Starkey, Chairman Rick Smith, and Vice Chair Delaney Nalder for their help and willingness to help with this process of finding applications and reviewing them and making recommendations to the city on the expenditure of RAMP funds. The staff recommends the council adopt Resolution 2261, appointing Cameron Cross, Maria Odell, and Denise Machen as members of the RAMP Advisory Commission, and appoint Jesse Barrocio and Julie Batchelor as alternate members of the RAMP Advisory Commission for the designated terms of office. Any questions?
The only thing that I know we discussed this, and I want folks to know that certainly we do appreciate the outgoing members, and we want to acknowledge them in a future meeting. So I know that will take place.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks.
I do have one thing for the audience as well. The folks that you mentioned who are vacating their positions, one was the chair and one was the vice chair. Can you explain just briefly how those positions will be determined moving forward, since we are making new appointments tonight, but not necessarily appointing a chair or vice chair?
Yeah, the bylaws indicate or direct the commission to make their own election of chairman and vice chair. And so that will take place hopefully in this next meeting.
Okay. All righty. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, we'll move on to item number C, which is a grant award on behalf of Layton City and the Federal Emergency Management Agency Hazardous Mitigation Grant. And I intentionally read all that out, so we gave Mr. Terry Colburn an opportunity to get up to the mic and be able to inform us on this information.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Bring before the council Resolution 2256, a grant award acceptance on behalf of Layton City from the Federal Emergency Management Agency Hazard Mitigation Grant Program, managed by the State of Utah of Emergency Management for the DR 4525-1R Layton City Generator Project. FEMA has a grant program known as Hazard Mitigation Grant Program, which awards federal grant funds to agencies mitigating risk and improving resiliency in their communities. The State of Utah Division of Emergency Management Agency manages the FEMA grant awards and distributes funds to selected applicants based on project specifications within their jurisdiction. Layton City submitted an application to FEMA for the HMGP on approximately October 5th, 2021, which would provide a portion of funds allowing the city to purchase and install emergency backup generators that will supply power to the city's water system infrastructure. On May 6, 2022, FEMA notified the DEM that federal funding for the project known as DR 4525-1R Layton City Generator Project was approved in the amount of $454,411.50. The cost associated with the project that exceed the FEMA awarded amount of $454,411.50. The cost associated with the project that exceed FEMA awarded money The total estimate cost to the project is $605,822 with estimated city participation cost of $151,470.50. The city agrees to complete the project by August 5th, 2025, and staff would recommend council adopt Resolution 2256.
Okay, any questions, council? The only comment I'll make is thank you again for seeking out grants.
It was
as
a good
stated
gift by
earlier.
our engineering department.
Yeah.
And I had a phone call before I came down to the meeting, and we were told, and I'll probably be coming back because this is like an 80-20 approximate, and I'd heard that FEMA was going to make it 90-10 and give us more
Wow.
money, so I'll probably be back for approval on that.
Excellent. Like I said, I mean, this is great because you can see how we're stretching all the taxpayers' dollars the best we can and be able to provide excellent service within the city. So thank you for doing that. Okay, I know that you have the next two items, so if you'd like, I'll just have you
Bore
proceed.
you away? Okay,
Yes.
Here we go. Resolution 2258 is a cooperative agreement between Layton City and UDOT for the 12-inch sanitary sewer compensation, which falls within the scope of the highway construction project identified as West Davis Corridor in Davis County, located at approximately 700 south and 2700 west. UDOT is engaged in construction, the highway construction project identified as West Davis Corridor in Davis County, Utah. UDOT has awarded a contract for the project, and the design build contractor will design and administer construction of the project. Layton City owns and maintains an existing 12-inch sanitary sewer line crossing the West Davis Corridor at approximately 700 south and just east of 2700 west. The existing sanitary sewer line is impacted by the project, causing the line to be installed in a casing. In order to resolve the impacts to the existing 12-inch sanitary sewer line, UDOT will pay the city a lump sum amount of $120,000 compensation in lieu of placing the existing sanitary sewer line in a casing. The city will use the compensation to facilitate the construction of a new sanitary sewer line outside of the project. Basically, they didn't want the sewer line going under the West Davis corridor, so they're going to pay us the money to reroute it to this specific location. Staff would recommend the council adopt Resolution 2258.
Okay, council, any questions? Okay, go ahead and proceed then.
This one we talked about in the early meeting, Resolution 2259, agreement between Layton City and North Davis Sewer District for the realignment and repair of the sanitary sewer lines located within 3200 West from Gentile Street to approximately 500 South. North Davis Sewer District currently owns and maintains approximately 2,100 feet of sanitary sewer lines located within 3,200 West in Layton City, which need to be realigned and repaired. The sewer line is located wholly within the city and is a standard collection system size for subdivision serviced by the line. The city and North Davis Sewer District agree that it is prudent for the city to own, maintain, and operate the collection system lines in this area. North Davis Sewer District will realign and repair the sewer line at its own expense. Upon completion of the realignment and repairs of the sewer line by North Davis Sewer District, the city will accept ownership and responsibility for the operation, maintenance, repair, or replacement of the sewer line from that point forward. Staff recommends the council adopt 2259.
Okay, any questions on this one?
I have a question. I know I asked something in the work meeting, but I just want to ask, how are residents who will be affected by that construction notified that it will be taking place, and what is the lead time, if you know, of when they will be notified?
I don't know the lead time yet of when they will be notified, but they will be. All the residents will be notified in that area. The ones that there'll be residents taken off the old line and placed on the new line, that will happen like same day. That we wouldn't let that go. But it's their project right now, so if that helps you any.
A little bit. Thank you.
Okay. Seeing that there's no other questions regarding our consent items, then council, thank you, Mr. Colburn. I'll go ahead and bring it back to the council then to take action on the consent items that we've heard here so far. In this case, I would like you to state at least the resolution number. I get the fact that we can condense, but I think we need to identify the resolution number if you could.
Mayor, I'd make a motion that we adopt consent items A, Resolution 22-57, B, Resolution 22-61, C, Resolution 22-56, D, Resolution 22-58, and E, Resolution 22-59.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved in second that we adopt the consent items as presented with their appropriate resolutions numbers. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Does anyone oppose?
I would like to mention that my vote wasn't influenced by what Terry wears, so.
Okay, well, thank you, you guys. Thank you very much for making that quick and easy, which now brings us to our public hearing portion of our meeting. So with that, we'll go ahead and call up Mr. Chad Wilkinson, who is actually going to present the information regarding the concept plan for a development agreement and rezone request for the Folkman Farms PRUD.
One second. Thank you, Mayor and Council. This is, as the Mayor stated, a three-part review tonight. We're going to be looking at a concept plan, development agreement, and a rezone request. Development is known as the Folkman Farms, PRUD. There's a resolution and an ordinance that apply to this, 22-60 and ordinance 22-23. Just to give a brief overview of the property is located on the east side of Highway 89, about 1600 North Valley View Drive. The existing zoning for the property is split. There's agricultural zoning, that's our A zone, along with R110 zoning. That's a single-family zoning with a 10,000 square foot lot minimum size. The proposal is to request an R110 PRUD. A PRUD allows for flexibility in zoning standards in order to provide for preservation of sensitive land features and additional design features with the subdivision. Property is just under 28 acres. You can see just a little bit of an orientation. I'm actually going to go off of the zoning maps. You can see a little bit more clearly some of the surrounding features. Valley View Drive runs on the west side of the property here, as I'm pointing out with the cursor. Our new Gordon Avenue interchange is right here, just on the very, very bottom part of that drawing. You can kind of see, again, Valley View winding around, the new fire station located here. It's an existing park trailhead here on this property. So just a couple of ways, and again, just to the west of the development is Highway 89, mountains to the east, some existing developments to the north and to the south. We'll talk a little bit more about some of that in just a moment. And one other thing just to point out, there is an existing Case Creek irrigation reservoir there, surrounded by the development, but not part of the development. This is it takes up a lot of land, so we have split this into a couple of different sheets to just talk a little bit about the proposal. The proposal is for 50 single-family lots. You can see those. Most of those are here on the north side of the property as proposed, accessed by some public streets, public street system that'll run throughout the development. One portion of the development will take a little cul-de-sac off of Valley View Drive to provide some access to about 6 lots there, just off of Valley View Drive. There is a street connection to the existing subdivision to the north there, kind of on the northeast side of the development. Moving to the south now, you can see the bottom portion of that existing reservoir facility property there. There are 21 townhome units that are being proposed. These townhome units will face the street, so there'll be a rear-loaded product that will take their garage access from the back, and will have the fronts of the buildings facing the public street. This is a little stub street for eventual extension in the future at some point. I'm going to go through and just talk a little bit about their open space and landscape plan. As part of the planned residential unit development, the developer can propose, again, some flexibility in our lot standards and development standards as a trade-off for preservation of either sensitive land features, or in some cases, in some of the developments we see in the west part of Layton, it's for some improved design and providing some flexibility there. In this case, it is preservation of sensitive lands features. This isn't a sensitive lands area. There are faults and soil conditions and steep slopes that apply to the property that put it within that category. In this case, there has been smaller lot sizes proposed. Those go down to just over 6,000 square feet, and then all the way up to about 17,000 square feet on the largest. So some of those lots still exceed that minimum R110 lot size. Many of them are smaller, and the reason for that smaller lot size is to cluster those and to preserve some natural areas with natural hazards, some slope areas that are predominantly on the east and south side of the development, with one small area located here close to the north of the reservoir. So this is a way, again, to cluster and to preserve those sensitive land areas and to keep development outside of those development areas. Going back to that plan for open space, they have included the minimum open space required for a PRUD, which is 12%. There's a little bit over 12% in usable open space. Usable open space is in addition to that area that's required to be preserved by virtue of it being in steep slopes or a sensitive lands area. So they have provided, again, some areas for recreation. There's 2 pickleball courts here, some open space with some recreational amenities, pavilions and benches, a trail system that runs along this public street that runs north and south through the development, some small open space that's outside of those constrained areas, and that can be used for recreational open space, and then some additional open space associated with some detention facilities and some areas to the south close to the townhome. Another thing that's important to point out is there is a trail that runs through this that's part of our planned trail system for the city. It runs through the development, and I'm going to see if we've got that right sheet. We do, and eventually connects to a trail that will run up and connect to our Bonneville Shoreline Trail connections to the east. There's also some additional trail that goes over a water line right in this location. There's a maintenance of that facility that needs to take place so that there is some additional walkable surface there. Another little pocket of open space in that area. Typical elevations for the development. These are some typical residential elevations for the homes that would go in. These will be further refined as we move through the through the preliminary and final subdivision approval for this development. A couple of just typical looks for those homes. These are elevations for the townhome component of the development. You can see just those typical ideas of what those would look like. We also requested that we get a couple just examples of what those amenities will look like: benches, pergolas, various areas that will be within those open spaces, along with the paved trail system that will go through a portion of the development, and then the pickleball courts and some playground area. The Planning Commission reviewed this item, and there was public comment taken at that meeting regarding the development. After the Planning Commission reviewed this particular development request, they did recommend that the council approve this development subject to a development agreement. I want to talk just a moment about that development agreement and talk about some of the components. I'm going to go back to the plat map to look at that. One of the items that comes up in any kind of steep slope area is the ability to construct homes and have a buildable area. And one of the concerns in this particular development was to make sure that we had setbacks that would allow for the provision of the proper drainage in between homes. So in this case, the development agreement specifically calls out a number of lots that have to have more than our minimum planned residential unit development setback, which is 5 feet. In this case, they have to have a total of 20 feet in order to provide for that drainage in between those lots. So there's some of these lots that applies to, not all of them, but that will be a requirement of the development agreement. In addition, there are several things called out in the development agreement related to design of the subdivision, timing of the amenities for the development, the open space elements of the development, grading related to mass grading of the site and what can be done with the spoils, which are the materials that result from grading of the lots and the home sites. There are specific requirements for those spoils and what can be done with those and the treatment of those on site. Again, every planned PRUD that we approve, these planned residential unit developments, require the submittal of a concept plan, which you're approving, which includes those open space elements. That's part of the development agreement, along with those facade treatments that we've seen that will be, again, part of that. As we go through, we'll need to make sure that the drawings for those homes are consistent with these concept review plans. So we'll be further refining that as we go. I think that is kind of the areas that I want to talk a little bit about on the development agreement. There's, again, you've got a full copy of the development agreement attached to your staff report. With that, we are also supporting the Planning Commission recommendation, and we would recommend that the City Council approve the development agreement, the development agreement, the zone change, and the concept plan for the Folkman Farms PRED. And I'd be happy to answer any questions if I can.
Okay, Council, do you want to ask any questions now, or you want to open your public meeting and then address it afterwards? I know that we've done it both ways, so I'm giving you an option here.
Just have a quick question.
Sure, go for it.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Chad, the street lighting for this, can you speak to that?
In terms of spacing, or what's your specific question?
Is it going to be the city lighting, or it won't be a private?
City standard lighting at this point, yeah. That's what we've been talking about, yep.
That brings up a bigger question with that, but go ahead. It looks like Councilman Roberts has one question.
It talks a little bit about trail connectivity and eventually connecting to the Bonneville Shoreline Trail. You mentioned the trailhead down by the fire station. Will that be all connected to that trailhead? My concern was, if we have a trail that ends in a parking or in a development, but then it goes to a big trailhead, Bonneville Shoreline, of a parking issue potentially in the development in the neighborhood.
Within the development was the concern?
Yes, right.
Yeah. Let me see if I can pull that up here on our open space map again. See, I've got the slides here on my computer as well, so I can see the details for myself here. But you can kind of see that trail coming from that south portion of the development through this development. It will connect eventually to that trailhead parking. Yeah, that would be part of the connection there up to that.
So there's adequate parking then to support the trail connectivity then?
Right.
Okay.
Any other questions before we open it up? Okay, seeing that there's none, I'll entertain a motion to open the public hearing. We haven't made that motion yet, so I need somebody to open it.
I move that we open the public hearing.
Okay. Second, all in favor? Aye. Okay, thank you very much. Okay, this is now the time of the meeting where we want to hear from the residents, and so if you wouldn't mind, once again, come up to the mics, state your name and address for the record. If you're speaking on behalf of a group, I'll allow additional time. If it's individually, then we do try to keep it to a minimum. However, if somebody before you has got up and spoke of an item and you want to reiterate that item, just if you could not go into quite as much detail, but perhaps bring up a new topic regarding this situation. So with that, the time's now yours. Okay, you're welcome to come up to the mic, sir, and if you could state your name and address again.
I am Larry Anderson. The address is 3090 Boulder Drive, Layton. Okay. I just have a couple of concerns about this high-density development. Number one, I'm going to try and be really brief here, but there is a little bit of information that maybe needs to come out. Where's the water going to come from for this? Currently, most of us here probably are already under water restrictions. We can only water a certain time and on certain days, which is really not enough to keep green lawns, keep vegetable gardens going. It's like just because we build more homes doesn't mean that the mountains and the reservoirs suddenly get more water. So it seems like maybe you could require the same low water use landscaping, that might be included in this, but have lower density and have overall less use of water throughout the whole development. So that was my one concern and a possible solution there. The second is traffic. I can see from the plans here that one of the roads that will be leaving this subdivision goes through the Jacobs Hollow Road. And Jacobs Hollow Road looks great. It's 36 feet wide, should be able to handle a fair amount of traffic. Unfortunately, it dumps into Boulder Drive, which is only 24 foot wide, and there is no other outlet from that. Boulder Drive is it if you're going to get down to the Valley View Drive. And some other things about Boulder Drive. Okay, at the bottom of Boulder Drive, where it's a T intersection with Valley View Drive, the north side of that, down by the stop sign, has a gutter drain with a 12-inch drop-off. I mean a straight drop-off. Somebody goes into that, they've lost the front end of their car. And consequently, people, when they go down there, they tend to graduate towards the middle of the road. And that's on the north side of that. On the south side, people coming up to go up to the road there are faced with a power pole and rocks the rocks start less than a foot from the pavement. So they tend to shy away from there as well, and they graduate towards the middle. What happens is with the car coming out, the car coming in has to wait on Valley View Drive for that car to get out before it can come up, because they're both squoze towards the middle. Also, and this happens often, it's happened to me, it's happened to other people that have maybe been here. If any other trucks or vehicles are parked on the side of most of Boulder Drive, it can turn Boulder Drive into a one-lane road because there's not enough room, being that only that 24 foot. This happens often. At the bottom of Boulder Drive, it becomes very steep. And many people have trouble getting up and down there in winter conditions. Additionally, the trees and brush on the south side of Boulder Drive at the bottom, very tall trees, very, very dense. In the wintertime, that blocks the sun from naturally melting ice and snow off Boulder Drive, so that stays slick down there. And also with the squeeze that I told you about down at the bottom, when the snow plow, the city plow comes up, they tend to shy away. So what happens is they leave 3 or 4 feet of snow and push the rest of the snow onto it, which then narrows the 24 feet down to about 20 feet in the wintertime. This foliage is not kept cut back by the property owner. It's been up to a few citizens to come down and cut that back ourselves so that we actually have at least some more limited access at the bottom of Boulder Drive. Bottom line, Boulder Drive has trouble giving clear passage to the almost 50 homes that use that as their only entrance and exit. There is no other. And with the new high-density development coming in, suddenly you've got the possibility of double to triple the amount of homes that are using Boulder Drive as an exit and an entrance to their homes. If the development needs to go in, it needs to have its own proper full-bore entrances and exits, not using something that goes into what looks like a good wide road and then suddenly narrows down and becomes constricted. Thank you. Does anybody want this information? I only have one copy. Okay.
Well, we'll have it on the record as the recording as well. So, thank you. Okay. Anyone else?
Yes, my name's Terry Luke, L-O-O-C-K. I live at 1657 North, 3175 East. My property is on the north side of this development. A couple of questions I have on this is that Valley View is a rural road. There's very little curb and gutter and storm drains on this road. This was sort of, in my opinion, because I was at the Planning Commission, sort of pushed through on the Planning Commission, and I don't think our concerns as citizens was heard. I'd like to know where a traffic impact survey by a Utah licensed traffic engineer has looked at adding these 150 cars, because there's 75 proposed dwellings here, that's two cars apiece, what impact that's going to have, like the gentleman said before, on Boulder Drive, and what impact it's going to have on Valley View. Okay, at the last meeting, the developer was pounding himself on the chest saying, well, we're going to put curb and gutter along that front edge there where they meet Valley View at, and that's going to help the situation. 200 or 300 feet of curb and gutter is not going to help the situation on Valley View. You've got people that walk on that road. There's no sidewalks for them. There's people that bike on that road going up to Fernwood to the trails that you guys are so proud of here. There's no bike lanes there and stuff. When Gordon was put in, bike lanes were put in. Asphalt was laid down for people running, walking, whatever on that. But it seems like Valley View up there is sort of like the redheaded stepchild here. Last week, we had a truck run over a fire hydrant. There's no protection for any of the fire hydrants along that road. There's no bollards on the fire hydrants. There's no curb around any of the fire hydrants there. And, I've developed land before. I've always had to do a traffic survey, whether we needed a light someplace. Okay, seems like this has never gotten done up there. Didn't get done on 89 when we decided to take Antelope across there to make another entrance there. No traffic survey was done. No traffic survey was done when they decided to Gordon up there to add more people up there along that. I think the lot sizes are too small. There's no lot sizes over there from Gordon up north on Valley View that is under 10,000 square feet. I'm trying to understand why all of a sudden I live on a half acre. Most everybody in Jacob Hollow lives on a half acre lot. Most people up on Boulder all live on half acre lots. Now all of a sudden, because our tax dollars paid for $1 million storm sewer to go across 89, that's the only way this is getting pushed into development, was our tax dollars paid for a storm sewer across that, because there have been 2 or 3 other developers that have come before planning, and it couldn't be done without that storm drain coming across that Highway 89, and it was $1 million to bore that through. That money should have been spent on upgrading Valley View. There's an exit out of that property there that it doesn't have to go through Jacobs Hollow and go down Boulder. The developer decided to, as the gentleman said, it's an access road, but one of the family's homes would have to be removed to have 2 exits out of that subdivision onto Valley View. So instead of putting that, they decided that it's better to come through Jacobs Hollow and down Boulder and impact all those people, all those families up there. The kids are on the roads and everything else, and no curb or gutter or sidewalks. Then put a second exit out of that so we're not getting the traffic up over the top through Jacobs Hollow and down through Boulder. I think we need a traffic survey done on this from a licensed engineer and see what he has to say about adding another 150 cars to the already 2 roads up there that have no curb and gutter like all the rest of the developments that I see around here in Layton. I grew up there. I can tell you when Valley View was a dirt road. And it's always been, since it was in East Layton, before it was annexed into the city, it's never had one improvement done to it since there except a little bit of asphalt every now and then. Thanks.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Cheryl Larson, 3082 East Maxine Drive. My concern is, like others, is the size of Valley View with 150 plus cars on this. As a person who enjoys the outdoors, going back to the gentleman's comments about the trails, there is no access for walking on Valley View Drive. Many times, I invite any of you to go walk Valley View Drive between 6 a.m. and 8 a.m. or 4 p.m. and 7 p.m. and see how fast the cars go down there. Most of the cars are traveling 40 to 50 miles an hour on a 30-mile-an-hour road with kids with bus stops that stop on Valley View to let the kids off. I have seen cars pass the buses. There's never cops up there. My concern is, again, 150 cars plus going on a 2-lane road that is not wide enough for most trucks. There's a lot of equipment that is coming up there because of the construction on a Highway 89, and most of those trucks, if I am out walking, cannot pass me and not hit me or my dog. And there are walkers, bikers, UDOT's. When I asked them the same question about closing off the access, they said, oh, that will go to the frontage road. I said, the frontage road's not equipped to handle that. But again, they said, well, that's the city's responsibility. So, and I have been multiple times, some of the drivers are very kind and they'll move over to the other lane to bypass you, but there are others that are not. And they are going quite quickly. And the kids, I'm always worried for the kids who catch bus along that in the dark. There's not adequate lighting, and you're adding more cars on there for 7 a.m. pickups with high school, 8 a.m.s for middle school, and 8:30 for elementary kids. And again, I have seen cars pass those buses, which it's scary with kids. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Susan Bangeter, and I live on 1247 North, 3050 East. The picture up there, I'm actually the smallest circle you can see right across from the fire station. So you guys have that lot right behind me in that small circle on 3050 East is a lot you guys have designated for a park one day that you've not done anything with, by the way. We have all these residents on this side of the freeway who don't have anything to do. Nowhere to go except walk on Valley View. Why? Because Valley View is the flattest area for people to walk. So you have people who will sometimes walk in that field just because they don't have another place to walk. And the little parking lot that he's referring to that has supposedly the trailhead, there's no trailhead, and the parking lot fits 10 cars. You guys aren't equipped to build this huge trail system and have the same problem you guys have down at, what's that other trail? At Adams Canyon that you finally just resolved. You're gonna have the same problem here if you guys build that many new houses, build this trail system that doesn't have appropriate parking. So that's kind of my side note with the park, because we have all these people who wanna walk places and all they have is Valley View. And like everybody else has talked about, there are kids out there in the dark trying to catch buses, and you're going to put 144, 150 new cars on that street, and it's a terrible location already. And most of it is fine if the developer puts his pieces there and puts on his sidewalk. Then what happens with the rest of the sidewalks? You still got the rest of that road, you guys, that have been left empty for years. And I'm just begging you, like the other person asked, do a test on how that's going to impact that area. If you guys are driving that road, you'd see how fast people drive. You'd also see how many people are out trying to avoid being hit just to go on a walk. And putting that many more houses on that street and Boulder, like he suggested, it's hard to go around that curve and go up Boulder. With those trees he talked about, and I totally get him, and I don't even live on Boulder. And so please just listen to what everyone else is saying and consider the impact that this is having on these roads. That's, I think, what you're going to hear most from us, is that this impact on Valley View is huge, and it's not been studied enough, in my opinion. So thank you.
Thanks.
Chris Parker, 1678 North, 3200 East. And on this Bonneville Shoreline Trail, it's just, I don't know if it's where you've got the access figured or how that's going to go from down there up to the trail. If you got a route picked out, or how or where you're going to get the access to it. Has that been decided at all, or is that just saying we're going to do it and not have a plan? I just wonder, because I live up there in the corner, and the more people up there, that affects me. So I've just wondered where the trail's going to go and, how that'll affect. That's all I got.
Thank you. I do know that currently we are under a study for our entire trail system throughout the entire city. So even though you might hear us talking a lot about it, I mean, that's part of what the study is, so that we can come up with a plan and be able to execute it. It's obviously something that's not going to happen overnight, but we are trying to be proactive on that study. Okay. Does anyone else wish to speak?
Chris Anderson. I'm at 3090 Boulder Drive also. And I'm one of the walkers that is out there every morning. And I'm concerned about the traffic. But as my husband said, where is the water coming from? We've got all those houses that are going to have, they'll have yards, they'll have water. But where is the culinary water coming from? We just drove by Echo Reservoir, Rockport Reservoir, and Smith and Morehouse Reservoir. Echo's not bad. The rest of them are low. Can anybody answer that? Where are we getting the water from for all these new houses that are being built? Is that a question that anybody has an answer to? It's not coming from the sky.
Okay. Okay.
Mayor and councilmen, councilwomen. My name is Tom Tudor, Tudor, 1757 Gregory Drive, Layton, Utah, 84041. I'm a citizen that likes to do the right things and the honorable things. And I have listened to everything here. And my opinion is that you delegate a committee to run those many things that are up there. I've been up there 100 times. And so it's my citizen is to help out and go look there yourselves, have the experts go up there, and then come back and have another meeting. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, anyone else?
Again, my name is Therese Lusitano, 2146 North, 1600 East. And bear with me, where I live is Hidden Hollow, so on the dip off Antelope. And I sat through a meeting probably 5 or 6 years ago where people were pleading with the city council not to allow the development on the south side of Antelope to go through for many, many reasons, traffic, okay? Mostly sensitive land. And what people were told was, well, you should have been here for the rezoning meeting. And my understanding is that's what this is. It's three things combined. And the developer, the presentation mentioned, just with a little bit of an aside, sensitive land zone, fault zone. When are those addressed? There's already people in the new developments south of Antelope that are complaining about settling in their homes, flooding in their basements. But what the city council told the neighborhood was, well, these people, it's buyer beware. That's what's going to happen here again. The developers have the money, they come in, they develop, and then the people who purchase the houses or the people who live there, if there's accidents, it's like, oh, well, it was buyer beware. These are homeowners, they've lived there, and they're pleading with you. And I think everyone in Layton City, Davis County, Utah, were saying, yeah, water's an issue. Landslides are an issue. When does this get addressed? Does it get addressed tonight? Do the people get to hear again? Or, when do you make your decisions? How do I get that answered?
Thank you. Alex, you look like you wanted to say something.
Well, I was just going to say that gets addressed through the entire process. So the city has quite a sophisticated approach, as has been talked about. Before a development comes forward, as part of the development agreement, they're required to conduct geotechnical studies. The proposed developer has to hire a certified professional geotechnical engineer to do a study. Then we take that study and we actually hire a independent third-party geotechnical consultant to review the work of the developer's geotechnical engineer.
So you say the traffic survey was done?
I don't know in this specific case, because our engineer isn't here, whether there was. Okay, let me finish, sir.
Okay.
Please.
Yeah.
Okay, what I can tell you is that corridor has been studied repeatedly as part of the Highway 89 project and then independently by the city. You can shake your head. I'm personally aware of that. I know the studies. We know the traffic volume, the estimated traffic volume that Valley View can carry, the capacity of that road. And the additional homes that are proposed here will not exceed the capacity, okay, of the roads that are designed. So I understand that you may not be in favor of that, and that's your prerogative to do that. But the city has a very thorough process. You've asked wonderful questions about water. Okay, water, if people will conserve, as they have the last couple of years, water is not an issue. The city has existing long-term contracts with Weber Basin Water, and we also have 5 deep water wells of our own. We have water rights too. So we'll have water typically when other people don't have water, if you're buying it all from Weber Basin Water. But the point is, we do rely on what Mother Nature sends from the skies. But this last year, because of conservation efforts, there were over 900 million gallons of water saved by the residents of Layton. That's a significant amount of water, extremely significant amount of water. So the reality is that this community is going to continue to grow. It just needs to grow responsibly. There were water concerns, there were traffic concerns, there were safety concerns when you good folks built and came into this valley and when the other people that have since come. So it's not a matter of once we're in, we can shut the door and say nobody else can come in because I'm already here. It's a matter of saying, okay, what's the responsible way that growth gets managed and meets the proper regulations and meets the proper safety standards. Valley View Drive, in the time I've been with the city, which is a fair amount of time, has been looked at on multiple occasions for the improvements that you folks have wonderfully talked about. One of the challenges is it'll cost the taxpayers of Layton about $10 million to do it and take about 5 or 6 homes to do it because of we just looked at this within the last year. The council's well aware of that. So our responsibility, I believe, as a representative of the community, both from a fiduciary responsibility as well as resident impact, is to try to balance all those interests. And we don't always do a perfect job of that. Everybody has their own viewpoint on what ought to happen or not, depending on if it's our ox being gored or somebody else's. But all your points, from my perspective as a city manager, have been wonderful. I mean, your feedback has been critical. But any suggestion that the Layton City doesn't have standards and we don't adhere to those standards is just simply not true. We have an extensive process and try to be very deliberate. We are pro-development. We're not pro-individual developer. We're pro-resident as well. But again, there's a lot of interests that get balanced. We try to do our very best doing that. But this impact, I've made several notes, Mayor, Council, several notes of things that questions I'm going to ask based on what you said. So I think this has been a productive, very productive conversation. That's what makes the government work. But again, any suggestion that these things are dismissed or not looked at is simply not true. You won't find anybody in the state of Utah that gives more attention to these issues than we do. We have had experiences with landslides, and we have multiple areas of sensitive lands, and so we know the impacts of things not being done right. And we try to be very careful about that. So thank you for your comments. I don't mean any of that to be negative. I just wanted to clarify the record on some important points. Thank you, Mayor.
Okay. Again, you need to be at the mic before you speak, but Chad, did you have something you wanted to add?
Just maybe for the public's sake, been taking careful notes myself. Happy to answer some of these questions. We usually will let people ask the questions before we get up and answer every individual one. I know sometimes there's a question about whether we're going to answer those, and I'm happy to provide some additional details about Boulder and some of the other issues that have been brought up at the right time. So,
okay.
So in response to Mr. Jensen's comments there, I was in meetings up there in '89 when Bob Stevenson was part of this council. And I face-to-face with him in those meetings and asked him at that time why they were making Valley View in the condition it was a frontage road. And that's what Highway 89 did when you guys decided to put, or the state decided to put Gordon up there. And now you've got Antelope coming up there. Now you've got a straight shot up there to what I call Hillfield Road, I guess is Highway 93. You've done all that without any improvements at all on Valley View. And I've been to those meetings and I've expressed my concerns, and it was just like when I was at the planning meeting and they told me, well, we've worked 2 years on this project here, it's going to go through. I feel like as citizens, you guys decide a long time before this meeting ever happens what you're going to do, what you're going to vote. I'm not against the development, okay? I'm in construction, okay? Without development, I don't have a job. It's just, this is too dense and it hasn't been looked at thoroughly enough. If you can give me, as Mr. Jensen was saying, a traffic survey from the state when they did Valley View as a frontage road or anything else, nobody's ever been able to produce a traffic survey on Valley View from a traffic engineer for that road. They've never done car counts. They've never done pedestrian counts. They haven't done anything. Nobody's been able to produce that. I'd be more than happy to see it.
Okay.
Chris Anderson again. Mr. Jensen, I appreciate what you said, but I would like to know where we can find, as citizens, where we can find the information that you talked about. The studies that have been done, where is that information available?
My understanding is the Highway 89 is a state project, as you well know. It wasn't a city project. It was a state of Utah initiated project. One of the things they looked at very carefully is when they decided to complete the frontage road system, whether Valley View Drive would in fact be able to function as part of that frontage road system or not. That was not a decision the city made. That was a decision that UDOT made. We had some opinions on that we expressed to them. My understanding is that they did an extensive count of what the traffic was currently, as well as what the estimated traffic would be on that corridor in 2035 or 2040, with the potential development in the area, which would have included this property. Based on the lack of development opportunities along the corridor relative to the carrying capacity of the road, what my clear recollection is that was why they were able to not make those improvements you're talking about, sir, was because the volume of traffic on that was anticipated on that road, even clear out to 2040, would never be sufficient to justify a widening of the road. Now, we may agree with that or disagree with that. Like I say, the city had its own opinions about whether that should, in fact, be part of the frontage road system or not. But I know there were studies done, and I don't have possession of them. We can certainly get that information from the Utah Department of Transportation that they would have used, because if the numbers would have justified those improvements, they would have had to put them in for liability reasons as well as others. So.
Yeah, but I understand it, and I was at those 89 meetings, and and they did what they wanted. But as far as the city said, you said the city has looked at things. Where is the information that the city's done with the studies about this property? That's what I would like to have that available.
The city has not done an independent study that we have engaged an outside engineer to do. We've looked at the Wasatch Front Regional Council information, which does extensive traffic counts of all the roads along the Wasatch Front. They're a governmental entity that functions independent of cities. They're state-based. We also have the data that UDOT produced. And then we've taken that data. Again, this is a general explanation. Maybe Chad will have more detailed. And then we take that data and look at what the development, the legitimate predictions are with regard to development opportunities along that corridor are. And they're limited because of the very issues we're talking about tonight, because of geological issues and other kinds of issues. And so we have made some guesses. We think they're educated guesses with regard to the development potential. And if we take the numbers that currently exist there and then make reasonable, logical predictions of the number of units that could be built, what they may look like, we have an idea based on analysis of what townhomes generate, what single-family homes generate, because we track that information all across the city. Then we can predict and say, there's going to be this much traffic by a certain date. Okay, is that exactly perfect? No, it may be a little bit high, it may be a little bit low, but we do that all the time with every street in Layton. And based on, I don't remember, Chad, if you do or not, I apologize for talking so much, but my recollection is that at build out of all the potential properties along that Valley View corridor, there will be the potential of about 2,000, 2,500. Don't quote me on that because I'm just going from memory, from long ago discussions. But 2,000 cars a day, that sounds like a significant amount of money, or excuse me, amount of traffic. On a street, that is not a lot of cars, okay, during the course of a day. It seems like a lot, and if you're used to 1,000 cars and it goes to 2,000, then it is a difference. But all roads have carrying capacities based on their classifications, based on their design and width and so forth. And so, again, I'm just giving you some hypothetical numbers, but all of those things were looked at. Again, that's one of the reasons why the city, just even recently, has in consideration of efforts to make improvements along there, has tried to look carefully, and those will be ongoing, I'm sure. Is it worth to spend $10 million of the taxpayers' dollars in Layton City to widen that road right now when we have existing infrastructure underneath the road that is in functioning order? Do we wait till that infrastructure wears out and then make those improvements? Is it worthwhile to take by eminent domain, if possible, if necessary, 5 or 6 homes that are along Valley View Drive in order to obtain a minor increase in the road width and maybe sidewalk on one side, and change many of the accesses to something well in excess of what we would otherwise require. I mean, Valley View is yes, it needs improvement, but it is a very complicated thing the way that road was built years and years ago. And the elevations both that drop significantly to the west and rise significantly to the east. So literally everybody along that corridor will be significantly impacted if you front it. If you live off it, it's not a big deal. Now, I'm talking too much, but I'm just trying to give you the background. We think about these things, and engineers think about these. Valley View has been on our list and on our minds for a long, long time, but the solution to it is extremely expensive and it's extremely complex. And I think the council in the city has done a great job of trying to balance the interests of existing residents plus the need for development. And sometimes development causes problems, but it also solves problems because it brings infrastructure into areas, even if it's incremental. You can't snap your fingers and it all just happens. It happens a little bit here and a little bit there. So I'm not trying to lecture anybody. I'm just trying to give you the background at all. But I'll be happy, sir, to try to dig that information up. And I think we have your name and contact. If you want to give me your phone number afterwards, we'll be happy to try to get that information to you. So I'll try to be quiet, Mayor. Thank you.
No, that was a good explanation and definitely some history there regarding what, the analysis that we've tried to do. So did you have anything else, Chad, that you wanted to add?
I'm just happy to speak to any of those issues that were brought up. It might be good just to, Alex has already covered some of that, but it might be good to talk a little bit about Boulder. I think that was an issue that was brought up also at the Planning Commission. Just maybe to talk a little bit about just generally about Boulder. This particular aerial photo shows it's not zoomed in as much as maybe it could be, but one of the challenges, as Alex has mentioned, is that we do these improvements as development comes in. So Boulder, you can see two new homes there, has actually been widened in that location. It does need to continue to be widened, and it will be. It will be widened as development occurs, as redevelopment of these properties occur. That's what's happened here. It'll happen here along this corner. And so that street will be widened to a wider street that will be able to be more closely matched what 3175 is. We did take a look at that. There is, again, the city engineer does review all of these street networks and the connections. There is adequate capacity there for cars to pass each other. There's 2 lanes of traffic there. It will be widened even further with sidewalk improvements as properties redevelop. One thing to note, though, that, again, what we're doing here is creating a system. This connection to this subdivision has always been anticipated. That street was stubbed in that location for that very reason. And I think that's also one thing to consider is that will provide additional outlets for the people living in that existing subdivision as well. So it's also serving a purpose of providing additional emergency access for those folks. I think the other thing to look at is as you look at the plan there, this is not its primary access. Access through the subdivision will occur at Valley View Drive. You can see that intersection that will be created. There'll be a future intersection that will be created as other properties develop. The street has been stubbed out for that purpose. So there will be additional connections created for a property owner living in this part of the subdivision to go up and around to access Boulder would be unlikely and very, very rare. I think that could occur, certainly, but that would be something that, is providing those connections between those subdivisions, but their primary access is going to be through those new connections being constructed at Valley View. As was mentioned, there will be infrastructure built by the subdivision developer along Valley View, and that's part of that incremental improvement of that street section. It will provide some of those improvements that have been cited as being needed there. That's part of this development. So that will occur as part of this development. Again, we've looked at that Boulder Drive or this street Boulder as far as the existing conditions, and the conditions are adequate to handle any potential traffic that would come from this subdivision, but we do anticipate that would be minor. It's an uphill climb to get up to this point. It's also an uphill from Boulder to get up to this point. So predominantly, your residents of this new subdivision are going to be accessing Valley View from the proposed access into this. And this just provides that good planned connection that has been planned for many, many years to occur in that area. And those improvements on Boulder will occur as redevelopment of these properties occur. And we've seen that happen. It will continue to happen as folks redevelop this property up there. And one issue that did get brought up at Planning Commission, we definitely do hear the comments of the public as they come to our Planning Commission, is the vision clearance area right here on the corner. There is a problem there. We're currently working on that problem. There's going to be some action that's going to be taken to correct some of that vision clearance blockage that's occurring at that intersection. It needs to be done. We've got some trees that are growing there that are too close, that don't meet our vision clearance standards. So we do need to accomplish that. That's something that engineering and planning have been working on. We'll be working with that existing property owner to try to get that to standard, not to try to, but to create that vision clearance triangle that we need to at that property. As was mentioned, there are some large trees that are growing there that don't meet our standard. We need to correct that. So that action is occurring, and we're going to be you'll be seeing those improvements over the next several weeks. So,
okay. Council, questions?
Just a question. Thank you, Madam Mayor. Chad, could you talk about when a development like this occurs or in development, you've got to bring, now it's state law, but you've got to bring water shares, water rights before it even gets to us. Can you talk about that?
That's right. There's the requirement for the developer to provide those shares. Sometimes they come with the land. Sometimes they bring those from other places. I'm not sure on this particular development if that's come with the land or if that's coming from other sources. But that is part of developing anywhere in the city, is to provide adequate water shares to cover the needs for that development. Alex talked a lot about that. I won't go into all the other details about our water supply, but the engineer has looked at that, and we will be continuing to work through that, and that'll be required as part of the development approval.
Chad, can you speak to the geological concerns and kind of where that started, the conversations, the reports that were filed, what this looked like at the beginning and where it looks like now, and the changes that may have transpired?
Yeah, thank you very much. I think, one of the questions that came up was about the geotechnical reports. There was a geotechnical report that was prepared by the developer's consultant. That was reviewed by a third-party geotechnical engineer that the city hired to make recommendations. That went through multiple iterations. That was not just a one-off. It was review, comment again. That resulted in modifications of the subdivision design. There were specific things that were recommended. One of those that was recommended was to make sure we didn't have lots that were extending into these sensitive lands areas, whether that be a fault line concern or just steep slopes. And in this case of the subdivision, there are both. But those areas were set aside. They were essentially preserved, which is the purpose of this ordinance. That's something I wanted to mention, is we've talked about lot sizes, but what the code anticipates is that you will have preservation of these sensitive lands areas, and as a tool to preserve these sensitive lands areas, to make sure that we don't have people that come in and say, I'm just going to put my lot lines right through that and go right through those fault line and steep slope areas. We provide the incentive of, we can have some flexibility in our design standards to make sure that we preserve those constrained areas forever, and make sure that development doesn't occur in there, as a way to try to mitigate those concerns that were raised by the residents, that we want to mitigate that to the extent possible. The best way to mitigate a steep slope or a fault line concern is not to build there. And in this case, that's what we've done. We've done geotechnical reports that have gone through, analyzed where the most hazardous areas are, and this particular development plan takes those out of the equation. It says we're going to preserve those most hazardous areas. We're going to keep them from being developed on, as a way to mitigate some of those concerns. I went through multiple versions. Like I said, this is not the first layout that we received. It was back and forth with the development team over the course of several months to get to this particular development plan that, again, is responding to those requirements and recommendations from those geotechnical engineers, both the applicant's geotech and also the city's independent third-party reviewer. That I will say did a very thorough review. There was a lot of back and forth, a lot of revisions required to get to the point we're at now. I will say one other thing related to density. We've talked about density and high density. This particular development did not require any kind of a density bonus. This is the densities that, if you were just to take raw density for this land, that could have been allowed based on your general plan. So the general plan calls for a certain designation of this land. These are the densities that could have been allowed without any kind of general plan amendment. What's changed is that we've had that flexibility in lot standards to preserve these sensitive lands areas. And we've talked a lot about this area. There's also an area on the south. This is another area that's got those sensitive lands characteristics, steep slopes, that we've also been able to preserve via this tool that we have in our code.
Thanks, Chad.
Yep.
Can you speak to the lot sizes? I hear, and it was mentioned here today, just about the concept of an acre lot. And can you talk about what kind of market there is for these types of smaller lots and why they're why developers build them? Because a lot of times people think the developers are just trying to fit as many houses as they want on there. And that's probably true in some cases. But can you talk about kind of how they have to respond to younger buyers market and what they want in their house?
Yeah, I think in this particular case, it's more a function of that preservation of those sensitive lands areas. This is an area, again, that has steep slopes, fault lines, things we want to avoid. And this is an attempt to give some flexibility in lot standards to preserve those areas. So certainly a developer could come in and say, we're going to put lot lines through all of these areas. We're going to, create impacts on all these sloped areas. But rather than do that, we've clustered these homes away from those more sensitive lands areas and allowed for that flexibility in lot standard to allow for that. Because of the location, I think it's not really catered maybe toward that, starter home type of category, but it certainly is something that you have some townhome elements there that are going to be less expensive than a single family home, but it's more of a function of trying to preserve those open spaces that we need that we want to make sure that we don't have the issues that were described before with slope failure and other things by just not building there. And the way to do that is preserving it through these flexible standards.
Yeah. Last question on the geotechnical. Are you confident? I mean, obviously you're recommending it. That you're confident that a geotechnical is up to snuff. Just up until a year ago, I lived in the area that Miss Louisitano was mentioning in Eastridge Park, with in a sensitive lands area. Are you confident that these geotechnical and geological concerns have been addressed?
Yeah, we again rely on professionals that have that specific expertise, but in this case, we're not taking the word of someone hired by the developer. We get an independent third party that comes in and reviews their work. I can tell you it was a very, very thorough review. There were several meetings going through each of those comments with the developer's team to go back and forth. There was disagreement sometimes on those, and we had to go work through those disagreements and come to a resolution of those concerns that were raised by our third party. They've done that work to resolve those concerns. Again, this is based on all the things that those geotechnical engineers do. They do test pits, they do analysis of soils, they do all the things that they can, and we rely on their professional expertise. So based on that, we know that this went through, like I said, multi-month, very thorough review, and we do trust that geotechnical engineer that we have. They do a very, very good job. They definitely do not go easy on applicants. They make sure that it's a thorough review, and we've had a lot of back and forth, like I said.
I got one comment here as well, just because I, again, wanted to hear what these citizens had to say, and I think you've addressed a lot of the issues. However, I know that this is a PRUD, which technically has a development agreement with it, or
it
could.
Does. Uh-huh.
So can you speak to the water drought tolerant type landscaping?
Oh, yeah, thank
I know
you.
that's something that we've passed here and really want to emphasize, so can you speak
Absolutely.
on that?
It's a great point. I had that on my notes over there, but that is requirement of this development to have water-wise landscaping. They'll have maximum turf requirements. It will be, as part of the development, they'll have to install those water-wise landscapes right up front with these developments, which is the best way to do it. That's
right.
That's the best way to do these, to make sure they're installed right up from the beginning. There'll be a requirement for landscape professionals to be involved that can properly design the drip systems and other things that would support that. But this development will be required, particularly these open spaces around the townhomes, the common area open spaces will all be designed to water-wise standards. There will be some recreational turf, which is something that's good. We want to see some recreation, but those areas that are not functional turf, that wouldn't be for recreational purposes, will not be installed. It'll be water-wise landscaping and address that concern that way. So it's a very good thing that way as well, and that's built right into the PRUD ordinance. It's a requirement for any of these that are approved that they have to do that.
Okay, this is just a quick sidebar. I know, and once again, when I mentioned we attend these league meetings, that apparently there's some really good seed mix regarding the grasses that will basically take less water to have a green grass or to have the grass. So I think that that's something maybe we need to kind of dive in a little bit as well.
I think you're right.
Perhaps ask on that.
I spent time at that conference as well in the last couple of days. There's been so much progress made, even in the last 2 years, on that very question. It's going to be something we're going to continue to. It's going to take education process not only for cities but also landscapers and others. But I think there's a lot of progress being made, coming up with good seed mixes that have drought-tolerant grasses in them that can take less water. Particularly in this area, it's vitally important that we don't add too much water because of the slope issues. So we are very, very aware of that. As we go through the review of this, they'll have to have those landscape designs that use less water so we don't supersaturate the soil and cause concerns or issues.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. You brought up something I was going to mention, which was the landscape ordinance, and you did speak to it about the PRUD, but even with those single-family homes and the new developments, there are still some expectations with regard to how much turf is going to be there because they're new homes, correct?
Because this is a PRUD, everything, single-family townhomes, all of those will have the same requirement. They'll be subject to that same restriction on turf and have to have that water-wise landscaping installed.
Thank you. And then the other questions that I have are regarding the improvements on Valley View, where the entrance will be. Can you speak to what those improvements are, just for those who don't develop and don't know? So if you're going to have an entrance and exit into a development, what type of improvements will be done on that street in that area? And will they include, as Councilmember Morris mentioned, the street lights? I'm thinking about the concerns of the children, the teenagers who are on that road, the walkers. I mean, I used to live in East Layton, so I know that road well as well. And so I'm just wondering if you can speak to what those improvements in that particular area look like. I know it's not going to carry through the whole road at this time, but please speak to that, to speak to some of the concerns that we've heard tonight.
Yes, I don't have the right drive access to get to their specific plans, but there are curb and gutter, sidewalk improvements that'll occur there. In terms of street lighting, that'll come as we review. This will come back to you for review of the additional preliminary and plat and the other approvals that we need to do for this particular subdivision. So there will be another chance to review that, but it'll have to meet all the city standards for those. There will be street lighting required as part of the development plans. I'd have to pull up the plans to get into the specifics of exactly what those improvements look like. I don't know off the top of my head, but it will be curb, gutter, sidewalk. It'll be all those types of improvements that we've been talking about tonight as far as improving Valley View, what we want to see to improve Valley View. And they'll have an obligation to put up streetlights in accordance with city code that meet the spacing requirements. So, and I'll go back just to that picture since I don't have the right drive access right now, but just to show you, when I say drive, I'm talking about computer drive, getting to that, navigating the right spot. You can see in those areas, let me put this back onto our slideshow, but in these areas adjacent to Valley View, you can see the right-of-way is being dedicated as well. So there'll be additional room for those improvements to occur in those areas. Did that answer your question? I want to make sure I answered the question, but without pulling up the specific plans, it'll take me a minute to navigate there. I could get there, but there are plans that they've submitted. It is important to note, however, that this is a concept plan. We're not into the details of exactly what those improvements are going to look like yet. We have a general concept. They've given us enough detail for us to feel comfortable with their plan and to know that it can be feasible and work. But the specifics of improvements, cross sections, plan and profile, those things that are needed to do the engineering will come at a later date and will come back to the Planning Commission and Council for review.
Okay, yeah, I appreciate that. For the sake of residents here and those of us who don't live there but are in the city, I think it'd be helpful to be able to put some visual pieces to that. So that's why I asked. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. You're going to have sidewalk all the way along that, right? I mean, isn't that a requirement?
For the portion that they front.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Yeah. So it'll start anyway at the top there and go all the way.
You'll have a section here, you'll have some here.
I mean, in the little cul-de-sac.
Up inside the cul-de-sac, yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
And then everybody else, when they develop whatever, they have to put that in.
As properties redevelop, they'll be required to put in sidewalk and curb and gutter along those areas. And there are some larger properties we anticipate would redevelop eventually.
Okay, Councilman Morse.
One more. Thank you, Mayor. the lots, are they going to be, since they're in the sensitive lands area, will there be a notification on the deeds that you speak to that?
Yeah, the development agreement goes into that in a lot of detail, actually. Not just notification. Because of the sensitivity of these lots, there's going to be specific grading, and there'll be notifications to lot owners that they cannot change that. There'll be some grading treatments that will require the use of improvements, retaining walls, geotextile fabric, things like that can't be disturbed, or it will affect the entire slope plan and drainage plan in that area. And grading plan. So there will be those specific notes included with those notifications, the CCNRs, notifications on the plat. Those notifications will be required as part of that development agreement.
Councilman Roberts.
Just a couple comments. First, thanks, Mr. Jensen, Mr. Wilkinson, for addressing a lot of these concerns. Some of the things that are really important to me are water and sensitive lands. And if I can reiterate kind of how the water works, when a new development comes in, they don't simply hook up to the system and is another draw. I'm an agriculture water user, and I've seen when a development comes in, every drop of water that we see, whether it's on a farm, in a creek, or comes out of our tap, has a water right to it. It's owned. And whether the city owns the culinary water or the farmer owns the water that's in the creek coming to supply water for their farm, when a development like this comes in, owned water rights are added to the pot, are added to the city's water system, and the city accepts those as part of the, as Councilmember Morris talked about, it's a state law now that the developer has to bring in more water rights to supply to the system. And I hope the sensitive land concerns have been addressed. I thought it was, and I mentioned it in the work meeting, I thought it was a great option to, rather than have these sensitive lands, all of that hillside to the east owned by each of those lots, it's owned by the HOA and nobody will build on it. Nobody will disturb it. So with the exception of those 6 or so lots that have a little bit in their backyards, that will have stipulations on what they can do. And on the access to the northeast, the way I choose how I'm going to drive, I go by convenience and what's going to get me from point A to point B the quickest opportunity. And looking at the development plan, and I know it's a concept, and we'll review it again, so we'll be seeing this again. I count about 14 lots that are likely to use 3175 East to exit the subdivision. It's just more convenient, it appears to me, for the rest of the residents of this development to exit onto Valley View Drive. So I think there'll be a lot less traffic than one might expect on Boulder Drive. And that's my opinion there. Thank you.
Okay. Okay. Yes, go ahead.
Chad, can you show me the zoning map one more time?
Yeah.
So R110 to the north, R110 to the south. Our general plan foresees R110 in this area. The zone change is already baked into the general plan, but the reason it's PRUD is simply because of the sensitive lands issue.
Yes, again, that's a tool that we have to preserve those open spaces, and those sensitive land areas.
And the 12% open space doesn't include the steep slope?
It does not. So it's in addition to that steep slope area. So the code changed in 2019 for PRUDs to require that any of those required open spaces be in addition to any lands that can't be built on because of sensitive lands issues or constraints.
But the detention basin does go towards
the detention basin is not, you can count that if it meets certain criteria for the ability to use it. So there has to be a maximum slope down into that. It can't be something where people can't physically use it. So it does count because it meets those.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions? Okay, seeing that there's none, I'll go ahead and bring this back to the council to, 1, close the public hearing, and 2, take action, or If you so choose, you could leave it open and discuss it at another time. Those are your two options.
Madam Mayor, I'd like to close something.
Public hearing.
Public hearing, sorry for my intelligence. And then I would move that we accept the concept plan, development agreement, and rezone request, which would be Resolution 2260, Ordinance 2223. Did I miss something?
You got it.
Got it all?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
did
got the
ordinance.
ordinance and resolution.
Mhm.
There was three, and I didn't know what that was. Anyway, so.
I'll second.
Okay, it's been moved in second that we close the public hearing and adopt Resolution 22-60 and Ordinance 22-23. I will take a roll call vote on this. I will start with Councilman Thomas.
Aye.
Councilmember Smith Edmondson.
Before I vote, I will say that I would not be opposed to the city having its own traffic study updated with regards to Valley View, just because of the number of folks who have moved in, et cetera. So I will vote yes on this being a plan and it coming back to the council later before actual development takes place.
Councilman Morris.
Aye.
Councilman Bloxham.
Yes.
Councilman Roberts.
Yes.
Okay, thank you very much. That concludes our public hearing at this time. That pretty much that wraps up our our council meeting. However, there's always an opportunity for any unfinished business to be presented. Council, does anybody have any unfinished business they'd like to bring up?
I do, Madam Mayor, have some unfinished business. I'd like to move to reconsider the amended plat for Shepherd's Ridge subdivision that we discussed and voted on during our last public meeting for our September 15th.
Okay.
Second.
All right, it's been moved in second that we reconsider the Shepherd's Ridge, is that the?
Yes.
Discussion. So it sounds like, Gary, you have some information you'd like to share with us?
Sure, yes. That is a proper motion because your rules allow you to bring it back the next regular meeting, and it needs to be brought back if you had a previous application by somebody who voted in favor of that application, and that would. So it was done correctly. Both the second and the motion were done correctly. Just a note, sometimes these applications, they come through very quickly and we don't have the opportunity of explaining everything to you ahead of time. And I apologize for that. In this particular case, it had been the subject of a long enforcement action. And as a result of that enforcement action, we came very close to trying this case because of the violations involved. And if you recall, the violations were both a subdivision violation and also a building code violation. The reason that it's very timely for Councilman Edmondson to bring this back and the second to be made by Zach is that we have a 90-day period under the settlement agreement that the city is considering entering into with the applicant or with the defendant in this particular case, to bring it, or to have it actually approved, to have the subdivision amendment approved by the city council. After that time period, the settlement agreement would go away. The 90 days expires on the 20th of October, so this is a proper time to bring that back so that you can reconsider your action. The settlement agreement, what occurred as a result of our enforcement action is that the defendant pled guilty, and as a condition of his probation, he was required to sign a settlement agreement between the city and himself. In addition to that, he elected to bring his property into compliance. So once the action on the previous violation was completed, he brought his property into compliance through doing additional geotechnical studies on the individual lots involved and also having the buildings inspected. And so those two things now allow him to have essentially a lot that would be in compliance. But for a settlement agreement, which is still maybe signed up until the 20th of October, he would be able to build whatever you could build in an agricultural zone. And that's much more expansive than what is in the settlement agreement. The settlement agreement is much more restrictive. And with this particular defendant or property owner, we thought it wise to tighten things up as tight as we possibly could, because we anticipate that there may be, either through him or subsequent owners of the property, an idea that you could build more on that ridge. And the city does not anticipate that that would be a good idea, either under the geotechnical study that was done or under the city's ordinance. And so the settlement agreement actually will stand as a restriction or a box around what can be built there. And so I wanted to make you aware of all the facts. That's the reason the request was of staff for you to bring it back. And Councilman Evanson, thank you for doing that, so that you can reconsider that before the 20th arrives and the opportunity to consider the settlement agreement disappears. And so with that, I guess we are encouraged, staff is encouraging you to reconsider your action to approve the amendment to the subdivision, which just simply amends that line, but it is also accompanied by a settlement agreement which will be recorded against the land, which limits the use to exactly what you see on there now, after it has been inspected by building inspection to make sure it's safe. So there can't be anything else built if you were to approve that tonight.
If we do it tonight, it's done.
It's done.
Okay.
Yeah. If you don't,
And it goes from owner to owner. It's not just specific to the current owner.
But I want you to be aware of the options so that you're aware of what could happen and what you have available to you now. So.
Okay. So council, do you want to discuss this any further? I know we had quite a deliberation last time when we talked about this, or if not, I'd entertain what action you'd like to take regarding this. If you'd like to reconsider the vote regarding the Shepherd's Ridge development.
So, Gary, do we have to vote on the reconsideration first and then bring it back to vote on the resolution?
Yes. Yeah, so the vote on the reconsideration would occur first and then vote on the actual application. And just another note, I did talk to the Daniela, who actually appeared in the last meeting, which I'm sure has talked to the other individual that was here and explained the situation. And their preference is that there be tight restrictions put on the property that could not be violated, that would be recorded with the land as well. So.
Okay. So, anybody like to make a motion to reconsider?
So since I already made the motion to reconsider, don't we just call for a vote on that first, and then we can
I need a second.
I did it. I seconded it. You did.
Okay, all right, sorry. Okay, well, that being the case, let's, do I have to do a roll call, or can I don't have to do a roll call on
I do
this
a
one,
roll call.
On both of them, on both actions?
Yes.
Okay. Well, with that, I'll start at this other end this time. Councilmember Roberts?
Yes.
Foxham?
Yes.
Morris? Yes. Smith Edmondson?
Yes.
Thomas?
Yes.
Okay, there you have it. It's unanimous that we want to reconsider our action regarding the Shepherd Ridge development. So, council, it's now back to you to determine what type of action you'd like to take on this. How would you like to proceed? What is your amendment?
I move that we approve the amended plat, First Amendment for Shepherd's Ridge subdivision.
My second.
Okay, it's been moved in second that we approve the amended plat for the Shepherd Ridge. Okay, I'm going to mix this up a little bit. I'm going to start with Smith Edmondson.
Aye.
Thomas.
Aye.
Bloxham.
Yes.
Morris.
No.
Roberts.
No.
Okay. Looks like we have a reversal of that decision, so now it has passed with 3 in favor and 2 against. Okay.
Thank you.
Is there any other unfinished business? Okay, I appreciate you guys tonight staying, and those in the audience as well, and I hope everyone has a good evening and enjoy the rest of this good fall weather.